Cooperative games have existed since pretty much the start of video games entirely, being a medium for friends to have fun with each other while also being a great way to meet new people. Throughout its existence, there have been many subgenres a part of it, including extraction shooters, survival games, roguelikes, and many more, which have given us some of the best video games not just in the co-op genre, but in all of them. One specific subgenre born in the early 2020s has been skyrocketing in popularity since its inception, with its audience heavily divided on whether or not it has a positive impact on the gaming industry.
You're holding me! To the top of the yes! Let's go! Got this.
Coined in early 2025, the term Friendslop refers to a specific kind of co-op game, one which puts an emphasis on the friends playing it rather than the game itself. These games usually have a lower budget, random elements like physics, a unique visual style, and heavy cooperative elements which encourage the players to interact with each other more so than other co-op games. A lot of games in this genre have innovated and revolutionized what co-op games can look like, which is especially impressive considering most of them are from indie studios. Since the start of the Friendslop subgenre around 2023, so many of these games have exploded in popularity, most likely due to the low cost of the games and the ability they have to create viral social media content. This attention brought forth by social media isn't all positive though, as many people see these kinds of games as low effort and only worth it if you have a dedicated friend group to play them with, which is why they got the term Friendslop. Despite bearing a derogatory moniker, a lot of newer games in the genre have started to adapt the name and spin it as a positive, reinforcing the idea that there is nothing wrong with having fun with your friends, even if it may take away from some core gameplay mechanics. Because of the controversial nature of Friendslop games, I decided to take a look at 5 of the most popular, each being different enough from one another to warrant discovering if they are worth playing or if they truly are low effort cash grabs. Peak is arguably the most popular Friendslop game, ironically considered the peak of the genre by its community. Bearing a unique art style and wacky physics engine, it's no surprise why it sold as many copies as it did, as its mechanics and gameplay is perfect for a group of friends to get deeply engaged with. Starting with the gameplay, the root action of just climbing up a mountain isn't actually very fun, but the variety in the environment and all the possible interactions you can have with your friends keep it from becoming stale. Climbing only requires stamina, and once you learn how far it can take you, it starts to become easy, which is when the game will throw a new challenge at you and push the boundaries of your friendship. Peak knows exactly when to switch things up, and in doing so, it creates chaotic moments within a group of people. On top of this, the co-op mechanics also shine here. Of course, they include key mechanics like reviving and item sharing, but they also try new things like lending a helping hand to a friend on the cusp of falling. Also included is a great physics engine and fun props to mess around with, which not only occupies the downtime between areas but is also incorporated into the core gameplay as well. This is what Friendslop is all about, using smart game design techniques to actually engage the players with each other, and not detracting from the experience just to do so. Even just having character customization adds so much to the charm, and makes it way easier to distinguish which person you see in the distance, instead of relying on name tags like many others in the genre do. On the negative, there are only very few things that Peak does poorly, but those things can have a big impact in the wrong friend groups. Firstly, the game never explains what any of the items do, which can sometimes lead to a sense of discovery in groups figuring out what they do, but most of the time you often have to waste the item to use it, so the start of the game becomes quite frustrating instead of adventurous, which is kind of the entire point of the game. Also frustrating is some of the negative effects you can acquire, from things like food or poison gas. Now obviously it's good to have multiple elements which can change up the gameplay and punish players for being irresponsible, but most of them affect you way too much and inhibit your ability to enjoy not just the game, but the time with your friends as well. Blinding vision, low stamina, and temporary incapacitation removes any fun you are having and forces you to either wait out the effects or try your hardest to succeed under impossible circumstances, all while your friends climb hundreds of meters ahead of you. Just changing the effects to maybe blurred vision or being invisible to your friends would push everyone to actually communicate and cooperate further, just like a co-op game should, instead of doing the exact opposite. Despite some hiccups, Peak does what a Friendslop game should do, incorporating mechanics which force people to work together and have fun while doing so. Often considered the very first Friendslop game, Lethal Company paved the road for the genre to follow and set the bar for what should be included in one. But looking at the game in isolation, you'll start to see many flaws which have been mostly omitted through the genre's evolution. While the visuals and horror theme make it seem like a finely crafted co-op adventure, many aspects of the game are severely underdeveloped and are only saved by the co-op nature of it, which also isn't very great. As the founder of the Friendslop genre, it showed how gameplay can be skimped over as long as you have friends, as all it consists of is gathering items and taking them back to your ship while avoiding monsters and hazards. Firstly, gathering items doesn't really work in a co-op horror game, especially in this way where instead of working towards a great objective or trying to overcome a great challenge, you just sell gathered items to get more money to buy tools to help you get those items easier. Sure, monsters chase you and there are plenty of environmental hazards to make the trip harder, but once they've been conquered, there's nothing else to have fun with. The monsters themselves aren't much either, as a lot of them have similar behaviour and just chase the players through hallways and outside, because you almost never have anything to defend yourself with. However, when you encounter these monsters, it does become enjoyable with friends, as each one of you will be frantically trying to stay together and stay alive while working together toward a common goal. That is what co-op games are all about, which is done to a somewhat good extent in Lethal Company, but the constant back and forth of getting chased around and then slowly collecting items throws the balance off really quickly. That's one of the game's biggest problems, its constant identity crisis. In some moments, it wants to be a survival horror game, stripping the players of weapons and making them hide instead of fight, but in other moments it has way too many monsters and you're forced to get weapons and fight them, turning it into hectic action which hurts the game quite a bit. And then once you've steered clear of any threats, you're back to a collectathon until you get enough money to leave. If they committed to a specific subgenre, it would have improved the experience significantly, but also may not have set up the Friendslop genre in the way that it did. So as much as it's throwing ideas into the fray and hoping you'll like them, it did show that a co-op game is incredibly reliant on the people playing with each other, instead of doing things individually for one shared goal. Lethal Company doesn't do everything right, but as a first in this subgenre, it had little chance of doing so anyway, and still it became so immensely popular that developers are still trying to recreate its ideas today. Being based on the wildly popular internet series and wiki, Escape the Backrooms is a little bit different from the other games, using a level-based structure and saving your progress throughout, unlike most other Friendslop games. This makes it have a lot more attention to detail in its level design and how it can scare the player, but at the same time it hinders its replayability, which is hugely important in a multiplayer game. Talking about the multiplayer, as much as it's fun to get scared and chased around with your friends, Escape the Backrooms barely has any co-op mechanics, with only the likes of item sharing and completing tasks quicker being present. While this doesn't make it a boring co-op experience, it can sometimes get old quickly because it relies on the game design rather than the people playing it, which usually is good, but in this case it is not great because the design can lack severely. A lot of the levels in this game are either boring walking simulators with nothing pretty to look at, or unfair encounters where you just trial and error your way through. Also, there's no random elements like physics or enemy AI, so there's absolutely no reason to replay a level or try the game again with different friends. If the co-op features were reworked, or even if you could revive a player when they die, it would improve it a ton and make it more about the friends playing it, rather than the lame game design. Usually a game that is more focused on its design would not fall into the category of Friendslop, but when the design is this poor, it forces the people to mess around and try to enjoy each other's company. The graphics and animations as well aren't anything to write home about, especially when compared to other Backrooms games, which makes this one appear to have a much lower budget. Friendslop as a genre is often praised for creating fantastic and beautiful games on indie budgets, but Escape the Backrooms is one which really shows how small the dev team is. On a positive note, Apart from the co-op mechanics, the regular survival horror ones are much better than the average indie game. Instead of relying on the monsters and chases to have all of the thrill, it lets some moments just sit there and create fear even when there is no threat at all. Usually after a big scary section there will be a calmer level, which helps the pace out tremendously but also still keeps the player on edge, always wondering whether there is something around the corner because the game never tells you if there is. This fear of the unknown keeps Escape the Backrooms engaging enough for most of the way through, even if some calmer levels are boring and empty. Furthermore, when there is an intense section, it's not all that the player has to worry about, as there's a sanity meter and a stamina system that can distract the player, forcing them to stay on high alert almost all of the time, elevating their stress and making for a true survival horror experience. While Escape the Backrooms isn't the most true to form Friendslop game, it can make for an enjoyable time with your friends even if you have to make a lot of the fun yourselves. Blowing up massively with streamers and content creators, the genre of hard-as-nails platformer with zero checkpoints is one usually limited to a single player. Chained Together breaks this norm, however, and makes the entire game reliant on 2 or more players interacting with each other the entire way through. Having a single chain linking each player does so much to the gameplay, making the players coordinate every move and actually help each other unless they want to lose a whole lot of progress. This then lends itself to the level design, which although it seems to be just a cluster of free assets in front of one another, it is smartly designed and is always coming up with new ways to test your friendship. Because it was designed exclusively for co-op play, they didn't have to be restricted with the design like some other Friendslop games and can focus it entirely around interacting with each other. Despite the environment and diverse platforming being the focus, that seems to really be the only thing focused on. As mentioned before, the game is not pretty to look at, as every platform and object have nothing to do with one another and make no sense in whatever world this is in. This may have actually contributed to the term Friendslop being used, as the poor graphics and random props make it appear like it was made sloppily and rushed through development. Although not entirely true, it does feel like it because of those graphics and even the chain itself, where oftentimes it will only have collision if it's convenient for the developer. On the topic of the chain connecting the players, it is unfortunately the only co-op mechanic, which still works, but it could have been even better if there were more things like pushing each other or giving a boost when necessary, further creating chaos and forcing everybody to synergize even further. These things detract from the experience quite a bit, but when you're raging at your friends for messing up a jump, a lot can go unnoticed. That's one thing that is either a positive or a negative for the people playing it, which is the rage and frustration when losing a lot of progress. On the one hand, when you fall hundreds or thousands of meters, it can instantly make you quit the game and never pick it up again, because who would want to repeat a huge section just to get back to where you were? On the other hand, a fall for some people is just more motivation to try again and succeed, and that can build bonds between friends, which is something any co-op game wishes it could do. So that aspect, although divisive, is one which pushes the boundaries of the co-op genre and is really a net positive all around. While the gameplay is incredibly simple and the graphics could use a major upgrade, all in all, Chained Together does a great job of making its players work together to achieve a common goal, something Friendslop as a genre has been trying to replicate ever since its release. Are We There Yet is the newest of all the games being covered, taking 2 or more friends on an off-roading adventure in a fragile RV. This description sounds wacky and fun, and looking at the animation style you'd think so too, but at its core it is a painstakingly long drive with many more bumps on the road than is advertised. Encouraging the players to work together to clear hills and avoid danger, Are We There Yet doesn't actually put any pressure on those players to interact with each other, so most of the experience is spent doing things individually rather than as a team. For example, the RV is somewhat difficult to control, which normally would force the players to cooperate and help each other out. This is not the case though, because it's not impossibly difficult, and most of the time there's only one driver and the rest of the crew is sitting down and doing nothing, so when you're not actively climbing rocky terrain or fighting with the animals, it can get very boring very quickly, which makes for a terribly imbalanced co-op game. Even with these animals like the snakes or the bears, they are more of an annoyance than an actually engaging enemy, and you can just drive past them like they weren't even there. If either the driving was improved or the animals and hazards were, it would fix the slower moments in the game and make it a more balanced experience, rather than being boring for 80% of the game. However, that other 20% is a great time where you're working together with your friends to clear an obstacle, and it honestly sucks to see it only take up a fraction of the game. The winch mechanic and the difficulty of some of those obstacles will have your friends frantically fighting amongst one another in a good way, something which can't be said for a lot of other games, but it's just a shame that it happens so infrequently. Another thing to mention is the lack of pointing players in the right direction. There are barely any signs or things that tell you where to go. Oftentimes just the dirt road is showing you the correct way. Because of this, some people may get frustrated trying to figure out where to go, especially considering there are often multiple routes you can take. While this may cause some fun chaos between the crew trying to decide where to go, it ultimately fails in what it's trying to do, which is guide the player in the right direction. In its entirety, RVVet is probably the one which relies the most on the friends playing it, something Friendslop is mostly made out of, but that reliance can turn sour very quickly once the game design shines through all the laughing and the bickering. In these 5 games, all of them include a plethora of engaging co-op mechanics and make it their mission to either split up friend groups or unite them together, which is successful 9 times out of 10. As sloppy as they may present themselves to be, they each have a striking charm not seen in many other games, which is partially why they are gaining so much popularity as time goes on. Although many Friendslop games don't have as much work put into the core gameplay as they should have, what is missing is quickly filled by the enjoyment of playing with a group of people, so almost no time is wasted and funny moments are shared tremendously throughout. It's important to remember Friendslop as a subgenre has only just begun, and as time goes on we will continue to see more and more games incorporating its elements, leading to a huge growth in the gaming community despite some of its negative attention. Although it may be referred to as slop, this genre is definitely here to stay and won't be forgotten in the near future, like many other genres have before.